Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should. Hi, this is Jeff Marsace, the Plain English Attorney, and welcome to the video. Today we're going to talk about whether or not a law firm should be your trustee. So let's go ahead. This is actually a question that came up in a Reddit format, so we're going to go ahead and go through some of these posts. Executor and alternate trustee. We're working with a law firm to create a living trust. We are having a hard time choosing an executor and alternate trustee. Our family is far away, and the firm said they could fill those roles. As a trustee, the fee would be 1% of principal and income. As executor, the fee would be 5% of income and 1% of principal. Does that sound reasonable? Now, this kind of brings me immediately to a quote going all the way back to that original Jurassic Park movie. Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should. Well, here's an instance where it's probably the very last resort where you're going to want a law firm to be the trustee. You've got to be at the point where there is absolutely no one left. If you think it's important for educational videos like this to get out there, then please help us out by subscribing to the channel. Let's take a look and go through some of these other comments. In my honest opinion, lawyers should charge hourly for trust and estate administration. Banks and trust companies charge a percentage of assets under management because they are managing the portfolio. Lawyers charging a percentage is an archaic practice and highly unlikely to be to the client's advantage. Okay? In many areas, including mine, the fee is standard practice. Also, in my state, the executor receives 5%, and that is set by the state. To exceed that requires judicial approval. All right, so let me just make a quick comment on that. When you are talking about probate work, yeah, 5% seems to be a standard. But again, you can get judicial approval to get even more. And the fact is, as an attorney, you're probably going to get that 5%. And if you want more, you will probably be able to persuade the court to get it if it's in any way reasonable. Any way, any interpretation could be seen as reasonable, you're probably going to get more. Well, why is this out there? Well, we had one case where a client father passed on. They wanted help with probate, and we charged by the hour. We had to get a California attorney involved for an ancillary probate. It was mandatory to get an attorney out there. They got 5% of almost $700,000 for clearing one bank account. That's it. Like 35 grand for just handling one bank account. So yeah, that percentage can really not be to the client's advantage, but the point is, if this is something that's ongoing, it's not probate, they're going to be the trustee, and it may hold assets in trust for underage beneficiaries for many years, and they're still going to be getting that percentage, 1% of the principal and 5% of the income every single year. All right, let's take a look at some of the other comments we had here. The fee is standard. Reasonable depends on how complicated things are. Do you own real estate that will have to be sold or rented? Do you own a company? Will the trustee need to manage investments? And dozens of other questions. Often an estate doesn't have much income because the assets are already in the trust. The assets that aren't in the trust pour over at death. All right, so that's talking about the executor piece of it. It doesn't matter whether your family is far away. Your family can hire the law firm that prepared the will to administer the estate without charging you any percentage of the estate for doing so. Okay, so here's that voice of reason where, yeah, you don't need to do that, and you really don't. So let's go ahead and continue here. It's kind of a conflict as it's basically self-dealing to serve as the administrator. I also prefer hourly, but 1% is also customary. All right, let me talk just a little bit about this one instance that I came across when I was reviewing a trust prepared by another firm. They wanted me to review it and get a second opinion. Well, the law firm was named as the trustee. So after the person passed on, there were assets that were going to be held in trust. And the trustee had the discretion to hold that money throughout the lifetime of the beneficiary. There was nothing mandating that it had to go out to them. So they could have this trust for decades. They were allowed to assign and hire themselves as counsel if somebody sued the trust. And they were also to assign a trust protector who could look into and potentially amend the trust to comply with law. And that's not crazy, but also to review disputes and issues from beneficiaries so that if there was a complaint, they could step in. So they're the trustee. The trust protector could hear that, there was a complaint by one of the beneficiaries that they weren't giving out the money when they really should be. So the trust protector brings an action against the trust, and then the law firm hires the counsel to defend the trust from their own law firm. So conceivably, they'd be getting paid three ways. Now, okay, if there are lawyers out there, oh gosh, that's a conflict and a judge would put a stop to it. Yeah, but again, why would you even start with that type of authority and power going to a law firm when there are other options? So, all right, let's make sure we're okay. Seems way too high. I'm a trustee for a few of my clients, and it's 0.75 basis points to 1%, all independing on the complexity of it and how much it will entail down the road once me bring trustee kicks in. All right, so once the trustee ends up stepping in. And then feel free to reach out. I can elaborate. And okay, let me go through what I typically recommend to my clients. If you've seen the previous video that I did on who should be your trustee and picking those trustees, people you trust, those are always at the top of the list. Check that other video for that criteria. So you want the people you trust. They can always hire a law firm, as the point was made out by that person commenting on the Reddit post. They can hire a financial advisor who can handle the investments. They can hire an accountant to handle whatever the taxes are. They can organize those professionals. They don't have to do everything. And really, distance doesn't matter that much. The way I say this to my client, look, if they're in the U.S., and we're not having to deal with foreign notaries and the fact that the trustee is not within the U.S. Okay, as long as we're not that far out, they could be on the other side of the country and still handle the financial stuff. It's not that big of a deal, especially, again, because they can hire who they want. They can also fire the law firm. If the law firm is the trustee, they're not going to necessarily go willingly, and they're going to have a judicial action to get them removed. And in that example I gave, they can hire themselves to defend themselves and get paid an awful lot. I actually did a blog about this many years ago, saying it was the law firm being the trustee is just basically an ATM for the law firm. So you go with the people that you trust first. If you absolutely run out of people you trust, and I always look, come up with 3. One person, and then if they can't do it, there's a backup. If they can't, there's a backup to them. If they can't get that, I want a professional. What if I don't have people I trust? I need some other professional alternative. All right, here's the order. First, look to trust companies. That's what they do. They're professional trustees. They're going to organize the assets. They'll keep things invested, and they'll deal with the beneficiaries. That's what they do. Second, and it's still a pretty distant second, bank trust departments. In a lot of cases, banks are still doing this, even in an age where they're going to have their own wealth departments who are going to work with clients like financial advisors. They just happen to be working for the bank. There are still a lot of banks that are just going to take all the assets, liquidate everything, put them into bank CDs because, hey, we know it's safe. It's in our bank and you're allowed to have CDs. Well, over time, bank CD rates aren't going to be anything compared to what's in the market or even some other alternatives over the long haul. And really the bank has kind of a conflict here because they're able to say, hey, look at all these assets we've got under management in our bank CDs. It makes us look good. And depending on the bank, they may also be quite stingy with actually giving the money out to the beneficiaries if they've got an option. All right, so what's third? People like me, attorneys and law firms. That's because that's not what we necessarily do every day. But if the law firm does do that, generally they're a lot more expensive than the trust companies. The law firm needs to be there for legal stuff, not for management of a trust ongoing. There's just not that much of a need, especially if it's a revocable living trust that's done correctly. So I can tell you, over the more than 25 years I've been doing this, we have 7 cases where I was listed as a trustee and it was way down the list. And we really pushed for them to be able to just pick a person, pick a trust company. Well, why wouldn't they pick a trust company or even a bank trust department? They didn't have enough that it was cost effective because some of these institutions have like a minimum annual fee. And for what the client had in assets, a $5,000 a year minimum would not have been cost effective. So essentially, I'm doing it as a favor. So you really shouldn't have a law firm as a trustee if you can avoid it, because there are so many other different options. All right, so I hope you found that information useful. Please subscribe, like, share this video with someone who needs to see it. The more clicks we get, the more subscriptions and liking the pages we get, the more we can keep this information out there, freely available for people to see. So, as I always tell my clients, and I'll tell you, please stay safe, plan ahead, and enjoy life. And whatever you do, make it a great day.